Goodbye. Hello, Heisman.
20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis. Oh, my God. Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game.
They give it back now to the 30. They're down to the 20. All the band is out on the field. He's going to go into the end zone.
Four-man Alabama rush. Got him. Oh, no, they didn't. Oh, my gracious.
Yep.
How about that?
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another season of Conference Power Rankings and Previews here on the 3 Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. I'm Mitch Mason with Trey Reeves, Garrett Turney. Fellas, we are back. We're starting with the Big Ten. It's Big Ten content all week, and when we decided where to start with the Power 4 conferences, we knew that we had to start with the conference that has won back-to-back national championships, Michigan 2 years ago, Ohio State this past season. Trey, we've gone through all of the group of 5. All of those are available on our YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts and video content. But now we are in the home stretch, and we're in the meat of the schedule. And to help us determine which order we would preview these teams in, once again, we turn to the fans, the Jimmies and the Joes. You put together a survey, a Twitter graphic. We're giving some stuff away. Tell the folks a little bit about how we came up with these rankings.
Yeah, man, the Jimmies and Joes really came through this year. Great job to everybody that filled out those surveys, participated in the giveaway. If you weren't aware that we were giving it away, first of all, how dare you? Because we said it multiple times on the show. And it might mean that you're not following us on social media, which means that you miss out on fun things like this. So make sure that you're following along at 3TechPod on Instagram, on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss things like this. But yeah, we did draw the names. We drew the random numbers of the winners right before we hit record on this show. We'll be sending you an email out. If you're listening to this on Monday morning, we have sent you an email if you were a winner. So just get back to us as soon as possible so we can get you a prize. If you didn't get an email from us other than our Substack this morning, sorry, better luck next time, but keep it locked. Well, I'm sure we'll be doing something similar like this very, very soon.
That's right. A couple $100 worth of gift cards to Home Field Apparel. And of course, the crown jewel, the one that I think everybody wanted, a free complimentary edition of College Football 26 provided by the 3 of us. But guys, you know what? Even if you didn't win, even if you didn't get in on that, you can still win thanks to our presenting sponsor all season long, Underdog Fantasy. Our partners at Underdog Fantasy are giving the Jimmies and the Joes the chance to get off the sidelines and into the game with up to $1,000 in bonus funds, plus a free pick when you sign up and use the code 3TechPod, all one word. Build your lineup by simply picking higher or lower on your favorite projections and win. It really is that simple. New players can get up to $1,000 in matching bonus funds and unlock a free pick by using our code. So what are you waiting for? Join us at Underdog Fantasy today, and let's party all season long. Please do this responsibly, of course. There are a bunch of, responsible gaming conditions, terms and conditions. I'll let you read those on your own time, but we would love to have you over on our Underdog Fantasy side. We're going to have a lot of content coming up all throughout the year, and you'll be seeing our personal picks that we're picking all season long. So make sure you keep it locked here and join us over on Underdog Fantasy. Thank you to them for presenting this show. Guys, without further ado, I say let's get into it. Let's get into our conference power rankings and projections. And as Trey mentioned, we had you guys rank them. We're doing in reverse power ranking order. Today's episode are the bowl hopefuls, those teams that, boy, you're just hoping can get into the postseason, but certainly have an uphill climb in one way or another. And guys, I think the fans, the Jimmies and the Joes, all kind of agreed that Northwestern is probably that team that's going to be most up against it this year. The Northwestern Wildcats coming in at number 18, maybe a coin flip between Northwestern and Purdue. I'll talk about some things that I really like with the Wildcats, and we can get into that. But the Wildcats, without a doubt, will post their hopes on the back of Preston Stone. Quarterback coming over from SMU, Didn't work out with the Ponies, unfortunately. Basically, Rhett Lashley had to choose Kevin Jennings over Preston Stone after that BYU loss. We were there in attendance for that. The offensive line just couldn't give Preston any time to matriculate the ball down the field. And so they went with Kevin Jennings, a much more mobile quarterback. He obviously leads them to the college football playoff and ACC championship berth as well. So Stone is finishing out his college career in Chicago, and I think he gives Northwestern's offense a huge boost. I'm very excited to see what he can do. It's been a little bit, I think, since Northwestern has had a really solid quarterback. The rest of the offense, though, is going to be a real work in progress. And Cam Porter returns as the lead running back. I like what he did last year, 501 yards, a couple of touchdowns. The offensive line just has one returner at left tackle. That's Caleb Tiernan. And then out wide, an exciting piece comes over from South Dakota State. We're going to talk about some South Dakota State transfers all throughout this preview. But Griffin Wild, who had almost 1,200 yards last season, 12 touchdowns in 2024, he's really the lone proven commodity for the Wildcats. So, guys, as we look at the chances and the hopes and dreams of Northwestern, Garrett, David Braun had a miraculous run 2 years ago, right? Goes 8-5 out of nowhere, put that program back on the map. This last year went 4-8, and this year the over/under is set at just 3.5. Fair or foul for Northwestern to be the 18th ranked team here?
I think fair. I hate saying it, but somebody's got to come up and draw the short straw here. And I think it's fair to put them at the end of the conference right now. Look, if you want to try to paint with a little bit of a nicer picture here, you could look at this and say that maybe Preston Stone helps things turn around a little bit. Like they need something going for them on offense. When your main guy's completing in the 50% for completion percentage last year, not really doing a whole lot, not very effective as a passer, you're not going to have a lot of success. I like guys like Cam Porter. I think Cam Porter's a good running back, and I think with a little bit more balanced offense, he might be able to flourish a little bit more, but we saw what happened last year when you try to ask him to do too much. Only runs for 500 yards, 6 touchdowns. Not a bad season by any means, but definitely has more in him. I think this is going to fall to how good can Preston Stone be. Can he be the guy that we were excited about with SMU? I mean, we talked about him a couple off seasons ago, talking about how big he could be, talking about how we were expecting him to ascend and be one of the best. It's a possibility that he could, turn out to be a pretty dang good quarterback. It's also a possibility that maybe we see some of the, analysis paralysis that we saw last year towards the beginning of the season with SMU, and then it doesn't end up panning out. So that's kind of my big thing that I'm looking at with Northwestern is just how good can Preston Stone be to kind of help him get up off the mat.
When I look at the other side of the ball with the defense, I think that if the offense can just keep the defense resting on the sidelines for far more than what they were able to do last year, right? They were finished in the top 40 in the nation in run defense. So the defense wasn't necessarily losing them games, but they just were not able to score points. And so in my mind, if the offense can do a little bit of that heavy lifting, just be a threat to convert a third and medium, a third and long, that could go a long way. And we know that David Braun instills kind of a tough physical nature for his team. I'm just curious to see if they've got enough parts there to compete whatsoever. Trey, the over-under here is 3.5 wins. And I wrote in our preview that Vegas is basically telling you they've got 3 automatic wins, Western Illinois, Louisiana Monroe, and I think likely Purdue. I have Purdue as the bottom team in the conference. We're going to talk about them next. But beyond that, even with a guy like Stone or Griffin Wild out wide, it's hard to paint yourself a case where Northwestern can go to a bowl game.
Let me paint the more optimistic picture, though, I guess, because I really do like the defense. This is a defense that brings back 8 guys that were starting somewhere last year. I hate the term returning starters now because that's just so vague. But so when I say returning starters throughout all previous season, I just mean they were starting somewhere. So they've got 8 guys that held a starting role somewhere. Really like the defensive line, in particular with Aiden Hubbard out on the edge. That's a really nice piece to play with. And I think this is a team that might be the most talented that David Braun has had in his time at Northwestern. Just unfortunately, it's a brutal schedule, right? You guys highlighted it. Over under at 3.5 is definitely highlighting that. I would be inclined to take the over. I think that they are a talented enough team to jump up and get somebody when they're not paying attention. They've got that weird home field for one more year in Evanston, right there on the lake. So that's just another situation where somebody might not be paying attention. They can jump up and get them. I'd be inclined to take the over, but yeah, the path to the bowl is beating Tulane and UCLA, Tulane on the road, finding a way to steal one in addition to those three that you mentioned, Mitch. So it's an uphill battle for, I think, a pretty talented team, but somebody's got to lose these games. And I think Northwestern just kind of is going to find themselves on that short end more often than not this year because of the brutal schedule and because of the questions at wideout that they have surrounding all that side of the ball.
I think that's what's the frustrating part about these super conferences now is I actually think there's a big case to be made through NIL and the transfer portal that you are seeing more parity than ever. And we've talked about this on our channel before. And you're right, like someone just has to lose these games. And the fact that the schedule is as bad as it is, they open at Tulane, they host Oregon, they travel to Penn State all within the first 6 games, road trips to Nebraska, USC, and Illinois, and then home games against Michigan and Minnesota. Like the math just doesn't math here in 25 to my eyes. Now, could they get on a magical run a la 2023? Nobody saw the Wildcats coming in that season either. And you could argue, Trey, as you kind of did, they did that with a lot less talent. And so certainly I think there's a potential for Northwestern to sneak up and bite some teams that aren't expecting them. If you take that mental break against the Wildcats, you could easily find yourself losing this game. But Northwestern coming in at number 18 in our power ranking. Let's move to number 17, the Purdue Boilermakers. And the Ryan Walters era ended rather pitifully. They went 1-11 last year. Trey, there is like zero continuity on this team. They have one singular returning starter from last year. It's running back Devin Mockabee, who I'm a big fan of. I'm rooting for him. He's just a little over 1,100 yards away from becoming Purdue's all-time leading rusher, so there's a storyline to watch. But when you look at what Purdue has in 2025, again, there are storylines and players that I'm absolutely rooting for. And Barry Odom, I think, is a great head coach. This will be his first year coming over from UNLV, but it just feels like this train is going to take a little bit longer to get on the tracks.
It's a true year zero, right? Because Odom not only had to rebuild the team when he initially got there, they lost 28 players to the portal initially. They then lost another 28 in the spring portal window that he had to find a replacement for. So his team is literally, he's going to find out who shows up when they all show up to report to camp in August, because it's a true year zero situation. You mentioned Mockabee. I think that's the player to watch on between both sides of the football. He's a really fun running back that they've got there. They got some interesting names on defense. Powell from Georgia. They got Tony Grimes, who feels like he's been everywhere, but he's going to spend his fat last season at Purdue and maybe try to make a name for himself there. But man, I just look at the schedule, and 1-11 last year, of course, 0-9 in Big Ten play. It feels like going 2-10 would be a huge victory for Barry Odom. Barry Odom is a guy that took over a UNLV program that was awful, left for dead in the Mountain West, and he shockingly made it back-to-back Mountain West Conference championship game. So the hope that you're looking for is in that coaching staff, finding that magic and being able to certainly just get the most out of whatever they do have. But they're another team that's just going to be up against it this year, figuring it out as they go, holding it together with duct tape and baling wire, and hoping that they can figure out a way to get a couple wins and maybe a conference win as well. I'm with you. This would have been my 18 out of 18 below Northwestern. Yeah,
there's just so many new pieces, so much unknown. You mentioned over 50 players transfer out. One of those players that left during the spring window is now starting quarterback Ryan Brown. He was a starter last year, left, committed to North Carolina, and then basically said it didn't feel right, decommitted from Bill Belichick, and comes back to West Lafayette to play quarterback for the Boilermakers and finish out his college career. If that doesn't kind of epitomize the transfer portal in today's day and age, like I truly don't understand how college coaches are managing, especially the spring portal window. Now, we're going to a one-time portal which will be helpful, and I think will give coaches some quality of life back. They won't have to be re-recruiting their roster all 365 days. But to say that Barry Odom is up against it in West Lafayette this year, I think is an understatement. I like a lot of the pieces at the wide receiver core. They bring Nitro Tuggle, comes back home. He was at Georgia for a season, Indiana native, comes back north. Michael Jackson, who's also similarly been all over the place, leaves Georgia, comes to Purdue. E.J. Horton from FAU. So, they've got some fun skill position players, but then you move down to the schedule, and very similar to Northwestern, they just don't miss many contenders. They're catching USC. They play Notre Dame in the non-conference and a rivalry game. Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Ohio State, Washington, and Indiana. Most of those teams, guys, in consecutive weeks. I mean, momentum is a real thing in college football, and when you're a team that's coming off a 1-11 season, you have your guys are all learning each other's names still a quarter of the way into the season. I tend to think that Purdue fans are probably going to be looking towards Matt Painter in basketball season somewhat quickly, but don't lose hope, Purdue fans. I think Odom is definitely a guy that can bring some of that spoiler maker energy back home, right? Jeff Brom did it with the offense and the unpredictability of, hey, we could score in 30 seconds and ruin your season. Ohio State found that out the hard way, especially a night game in Ross-Ade Stadium. This time around, it's going to be more on the other side. I think Purdue is going to be built with a tough-nosed defense made in mind, and he brings Mike Scherer, his DC from UNLV, over with him. He hires Josh Henson from USC to be the offensive coordinator. Henson's built his reputation on the offensive line, on tight ends. So I think this is going to be a stout team, a physical team in time, but maybe just not in 2025. Number 16, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And we had some late movement, Trey, in between Purdue and Rutgers. I think it's clear that folks maybe don't believe in Rutgers the way that I so desperately want to. And I think I actually painted a pretty optimistic picture of them when I wrote their preview and projection. I have them much higher in my hopefuls category. I actually have them as, I guess, the 13th team in the Big Ten, whereas they're coming in at 16 here, according to the Jimmies and the Joes. They started last year 4-0, and they looked like they had all this momentum in the world, and then a sluggish loss to Nebraska, 14-7. The offense just kind of falls apart. They get blown out by Wisconsin, that didn't do that to anybody last year, and they just kind of fell apart. They had one-score losses to UCLA, Illinois, and then lose in a classic in the Rate Bowl to Kansas State. So when I look at the storylines, and Garrett, I'll pitch this to you, number one, Kyle Monagai is not in town anymore, and that seems like the biggest hurdle that Greg Schiano and company have to overcome.
Yeah, that really is going to be the big thing, is how can they get the run game going. It's been such a big part of their offense since he's been there. And I mean, I was even looking at the numbers. He almost ran for half the yards they passed for last year. So yeah, he's just such a massive part of what they want to do. Obviously great career, but all good things must come to an end. Looking at CJ Campbell is kind of the new guy. So hoping that he can, kind of help turn some stuff around and keep things on track there. But I think a lot of this is just going to come down to Callie McManus being able to be the new face of that offense and be able to say, hey, I got some experience, developed a little bit, played a little bit better than I think I expected him to last year. Didn't light the world on fire, but definitely stepped up from his previous stop. He's going to have to find a way to really put these guys over the top and really put these guys in a good position.
Trey, you might have used the Oregon graphic for this one. For those watching on YouTube,
alphabetical order screwed me there, and also the Big Ten for having 18 teams and making me make 18 of these graphics.
Yes, if you're on YouTube, no, Rutgers did not go 13-1 last season. If you're listening on the podcast side, which so many of you are, we've literally had just an explosion of listeners on Spotify and Apple. Yeah, we have these sweet graphics that Trey has put together for the video previews, but this one unfortunately says that Rutgers went 13-1. Trey, I'll kick it to you.
How can Rutgers go 13-1 this year? Let me tell you.
I was gonna say, I asked in the preview, could Rutgers be dangerous through the air? Athen Callie McManus was a little bit more effective than what we thought. So I'll give you the last word here. Are they going 13-1 behind AK?
Listen, all jokes aside, I do think this is another team that the talent is much better than what their record will probably be. You see, the correct thing on that graphic is that their over-under is 5.5. Betting odds favor the over. I tend to agree on that. I think this is a bowl team on talent alone, but it's another team that is going to have a really difficult road to get there. I like AK. I like that he has KJ Duff coming back. I like that he has a lot of continuity on the offensive line. I think they have over 100 career starts between the 5 projected starters on the offensive line, so that's something I really like. DJ Jabome on the defensive side, maybe one of the best returning linebackers in the whole Big Ten. So there's a lot of really interesting pieces on this Rutgers team, but man, you look at their schedule, they draw the top 4 in our listener rankings. So if our listeners know ball, they play all the top 4. They go to Washington on the longest possible conference road trip probably in the country. I haven't done the math on like Stanford, Miami or anything like that, but they have to go to Washington this year. They host Iowa. So it's a tough road to get to 6-6. I think they have to split. They host Iowa and go to Minnesota. I think they have to at least split those to go 6-6 and get to a bowl game. But it's another team, man. It might be Greg Schiano's most talented top to bottom since he's returned to Piscataway. And it's just a shame that the schedule makers are really, really doing them dirty.
No favors for college football's original team. I do like the defense. They've got to replace a ton of production, and there were a couple of guys from the last 2 or 3 seasons that were just kind of synonymous with Rutgers football. And this year they're all gone. But I think Schiano did a good job going to the portal. They get Cam Miller from Penn State in the secondary, Jet Elad from UNLV, Jacoby Henderson comes over from a conference champion in Marshall. And then 2 of my favorite guys from the Group of 5 previews, Bradley Weaver and Eric O'Neill, both join off the edge. So you start to look at some of the pieces, and yeah, I do think out of the teams that we've talked about so far, which is just 3, like I said, I think I have Rutgers farther ahead in the rankings, probably in the 12 to 13 range, because I do think that this team can get to a bowl game. Now, to your point, Trey, I can't really tell you where that 6th win is coming from. I can get them to 5-7 and sleep very comfortably at night. But they are going to have a game where they score 35 to 40 points and get contributions, some decent turnovers, I think, from that defensive unit. You mentioned Iowa and Minnesota maybe being the 2 spots where they've got to find a way to win. I think Washington as well. It's a tough ask going on the road, but Washington, as far as in my rankings, the Huskies and Minnesota are probably the closest to being on upset watch in that game. But we'll see. The Big Ten is...
But both of those games are on the road, and
I know.
That's what's troubling.
I know.
They got to go all the way across the country to Washington. They got to go, to a traditionally tougher place to play in Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah, and if Gronowski is slinging the rock for Iowa, I mean, that's going to travel as well. We know the defense is going to be ready to go for the Hawkeyes, so if they add an extra element to that offense, we'll talk about them, I believe, in 2 episodes. We'll see. Wednesday or Friday, you'll hear about the Hawkeyes. But yeah, Rutgers may be up against it. I am excited about them. I'm bullish on them. I'm officially taking the over. Just kind of set that one and forget it, and we'll see where it ends up. Number 15, the UCLA Bruins. And Garrett, we all remember Deshaun Foster taking the podium for Big Ten Media Days. And he said something about being in LA and we're not hard to find and we play some football. And it was about as uninspiring a start to their season as you could have asked for. They limped out of the gate. They started 1-5. The offense was inept under Eric Bieniemy, who has since been dismissed. And the defense just simply couldn't keep up. The rushing defense was elite. The pass defense at times a little leaky. But they closed very strong. And I wrote essentially... very similar to our golf games, they just needed a couple warm-up holes, right? And then they start to find a birdie or 2 down the back 9. It felt like UCLA got a little bit of momentum, and then you combine that with the offseason drama with Nico Iamaleava coming over. You combine that with a brand-new offensive coordinator, a guy who has architected Indiana's playoff run last year in Tino Sunseri, and suddenly you can start to talk yourself into a couple wins and maybe a bowl game for the Bruins.
Yeah, I want to give Deshaun Foster his cookies a little bit. I want to give him some flowers. Just let him, get a little bit of praise here. The fact that they won like anything last year, I think, was a shock. He was a former running back coach before he got this, so wasn't really in even like a coordinator role. Then obviously we talk about the media days and not really handling it, but and I'll bring the setup one more time. They traveled further last season than 26 NFL teams. It's one of my favorite stats I've ever read about a sports team ever, that UCLA, just because of stupid conference stuff, had to travel more than teams that were playing like 3 more road games than them. So, it was a tough season. I didn't really expect very much out of UCLA, and the fact that they got their way up to almost a bowl game, I think gives a lot of credit, especially with how bad the offense was. I mean, Ethan Garbers threw the most picks in the conference, so that's not fantastic. You want to see more out of that. Look, even if you don't get elite quarterback play out of Nico, he's going to be an upgrade. You're going to get more out of Nico than you had last year. And then it's just about the supporting cast, right? Who comes around him? Are there guys that can, make the offense a little bit more fun than, 126 in scoring? Like, can you find a way to score 20 points a game and just up that number a little bit, or, I don't know, shoot even a little bit higher? But I'm really excited to see what they can accomplish this season with a little bit less travel, with a little bit more experience, right? He's been through the ringer. He's done it once. I think this could be a bowl team for sure. I think this is maybe one of my favorite teams down here at the bottom of our rankings. This is a team that I believe in just a little bit more. Taking the Nico drama and all of that aside, like obviously that was a big dramatic saga, and that's just today with NIL and the portal and everything else. He's still a really good player, and he's still going to contribute a lot at UCLA. So I'm excited to see kind of where they go here. And I think that if they can keep that defense up, they played some pretty decent defense. If they can keep the defense up, this is a team that I'm looking at to make a big jump going into next season.
If there's a name that's hot in the streets that could get Iamaleava over to his potential, it's Sunseri, right? It's definitely the the offense that UCLA needs to end up getting to a bowl game. We'll get Garrett back if you're on the YouTube side. Probably just had to step out there for a second. But on the defensive side, Trey, as I'll bring you back in, there's a number of big-time playmakers that UCLA brought in, right? And especially when it came to keeping the run defense at the top of the conference, improving the pass defense, they knew they had to start off the edge. And so they go get Ben Perry, who's going to play the linebacker safety combo. He's going to be all over the field. They bring in Nico DeValier from Arkansas to start on edge. And in the secondary, they really loaded up in the secondary with portal names. Key Lawrence, a guy who's made big plays at Ole Miss. Byron Threats comes over from Central Florida. They get a guy from Miami. Andre Jordan comes down from Oregon State. So, again, another team where it feels like if this is a team that went 8-4 last year and you've seen it a little bit more, you've seen the pathway to success, maybe you can talk yourself into 6, 7, 8 wins. But as it stands, I wrote that I'm going to take the under here 5.5 simply because I like the direction we're heading, but it's not necessarily something I'm going to believe in until I've seen it done.
Yeah, you need to see the proof of concept, right? We've got to see. That's really well said. I think I'm right there with you on UCLA this year. And I think another thing adding to it is it's a manageable conference schedule, which sounds kind of weird because they do play Penn State. They do go to Indiana. They do go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
But, there's supplemental opponents. Their other road games are Northwestern, Michigan State, and USC. I don't think that I would pick against them necessarily Sharpie losses in any of those 3 other road games. So it's a manageable conference schedule. I really am interested to see how they come out of the gate because this is a tricky non-conference schedule.
Yes, it is.
To start the year. They host Utah week 1. It's an 11 p.m. Eastern kick on Fox, so we'll be watching that one as we record our week 1 reaction show probably. They go to UNLV. Who knows what UNLV is going to be this year with all the transfers that they have, but they have, of course, Dan Mullen running the show there now, and they have maybe one of the most talented top-to-bottom teams in the entire G5. And then they host New Mexico, which not expecting massive things from the Lobos this year after a lot of their team portaled after they lost Bronco Mendenhall, but a team that could jump up and get you and maybe has enough offensive pieces to make things interesting if the defense hasn't quite gelled yet. So that's an interesting non-conference slate for a team that's trying to piece together a defense and try to get them to figure things out all together for the first time. If they can sweep that, I see a path to 6-6. I think if they can sweep that non-conference slate, I think I can find them 3 conference wins relatively easily to get them to a bowl game. But if they stub their toe against Utah or UNLV or heaven forbid both, I think that path just gets really, really difficult really quickly.
Yeah, and I think one of the key factors that we haven't mentioned yet is the running game for UCLA. Non-existent. Non-existent last year. They ran for not even, I rounded up in the preview, they didn't even run for 87 yards a game last year. Jalen Berger came over from, I believe, Michigan State, and before then he was at Wisconsin. So third stop, and a former highly touted blue chip recruit. Like he was supposed to come in and really help. I think the offensive line had some struggles last year. But this year, Iamaleava, we've seen the game get too fast for him at times, and he used a very solid run game at Tennessee to balance that offense out and to take those deep shots down the field. If UCLA can't run the ball this year, I think all of this projection about the offense improving maybe goes out the window. We talked about it last year with Indiana. Folks did not give Indiana the credit that they were due running the football. A lot of times, like that Washington game, that was not on the arm of Curtis Rourke. That was on the ground. They just kind of outslugged the Huskies all throughout that game for 4 quarters. UCLA has to at least take some steps forward to improve that. They were 131st in the country. Just be average running the football this year, and I think that's when the schedule, the playbook, the results really start to open up for the UCLA Bruins. 2 teams left in this section. The bowl hopefuls for the Big Ten is power ranked by you guys, the Jimmies and the Joes. Number 14, much lower on this list than I would like to see normally, the Wisconsin Badgers. And guys, I'll just throw it out off the top. How hot is Luke Fickell's seat in Camp Randall? Because to me, it feels like it kind of should be scorching hot.
It's so difficult, though, because if you just look at the results and the win-loss records, I know we evaluate everybody off of that, then it's definitely been subpar. It's not what they hired him to be. But he's yet to have a quarterback finish a season as a starter. He's been down to his 3rd string at times as a starting quarterback. He made a flashy offensive coordinator hire that didn't really pan out, and I think that he's learned from that mistake. They're shifting back to a different system. Jeff Grimes is going to come in, and but we laugh, but Jeff Grimes has run some really good offenses at places that's not easy to run good offenses. BYU, he was a Broyles Award winner or finalist. Baylor, he was a Broyles Award finalist. So I think that Jeff Grimes can be a better OC for Wisconsin than he was for Kansas last year, because I think Kansas was trying to fit a lot of square pegs into some round holes in his offense, and it just really didn't work. But with Wisconsin, I think they're going to switch to a zone run scheme. I think they have the backs that can really do that. I really like Darian Dupree in that role, and maybe Dylan Jones as well. I think that the offense could really turn around. So the seat is probably very hot. Let me circle back to the question you actually asked. The seat is probably pretty hot, but I think there has to be a little bit of grace there, right? Because of the quarterback situation, because of leading Wisconsin through a transition time when they're not in the Big Ten West anymore, and they have to find a way to beat these teams that are playing a different style of football than they were building to for years and years and years. So he needs to win. I think the schedule is going to probably buy him maybe some more grace this year. If he can find a way to 5 wins again, I think that's going to be a borderline miracle, but we'll see. He was hired to be much better than he has been. That's for sure.
Well, and I think, Garrett, I'll throw this to you next too. First of all, Cade Giacomelli, I know carries a lot of hope with him in the Wisconsin backfield, 8.3 yards a pop last season. You mentioned Grimes getting back to his own running scheme, and that's what Wisconsin football should be. I mean, we loved the attempt of the dairy raid, right? But it didn't work. And it didn't work for a variety of reasons. And sure, Phil Longo had to fall on his sword there and get dismissed. And now he's, down coaching his beloved Sam Houston State Bearcats. So I think, honestly, all parties might have won in the end here. Where I'm not sure what to believe is the defense took an uncharacteristic step backwards last year. They were not good against the run, 91st against the run. We're just not used to seeing Wisconsin get pushed around, especially in the trenches. And you mentioned that Fickell is going to once again go to the transfer portal for a quarterback. All 3 years, he's relied on a transfer portal quarterback. There has been no development at that position. They just watched their last 2 4-star recruits exit via the portal. Mayberry Medauer was kind of the next shining hope up at Wisconsin. He's now at Sam Houston State with Phil Longo. So they go to Billy Edwards from Maryland. And Garrett, he was a dual threat guy for the Terps last year. Turned the ball over a little bit more than what I would have liked. 9 interceptions to, I think it was 13 touchdowns, I want to say, almost 3,000 yards. So if they are getting back to his own running scheme, it feels like, having a guy who is dual threat can roll out of the pocket on those play action passes and make you respect both his arm and his legs, in theory, is a really good thing. But I look at their schedule as well, and I just don't know if Billy Edwards Jr. is the guy that's going to get my team to a bowl game.
Yeah, he wouldn't be the one that I'd want to rely on in this situation. I'm a little bit further down on Wisconsin than I think probably most people are. I don't think they're going to end up being too good. And a lot of it just has to do with the fact that Luke Fickell's had talent. He's supposed to be a really good coach. We've seen what he's been able to do, in the past, but he just, it isn't working. Something isn't working. I don't know what it is. And to kind of go back to the hot seat question for a second, I don't think there's anything he does this year that gets him fired, but there's a lot of stuff he can do this year that puts him on every single hot seat list next offseason, right? So there's a lot of stuff he can do that'll say, if he doesn't make a bowl game, then patience will start wearing thin, because Wisconsin has gotten used to, and I think rightfully so, a pretty fair, sustained level of success, and it's just not there right now with Wisconsin. I wouldn't want to be relying on Billy Edwards Jr. to be my quarterback, and just from a consistency standpoint, I think, if you're Wisconsin, you talked about the zone scheme and being able to run. That's great. Not turning the ball over, I think, would be something that I'd really want to see out of him, is just finding a way to not throw the ball to the other team, because I want to make everything count if my offense is struggling, right? If I'm trying to rely on the run to convert, long drives into points, I don't want to turn the ball over. I want as many opportunities as I can get. And especially if that involves things like time of possession, trying to keep the other team's defense on the field, wear them down a little bit. Those are all things that you have to stay on the field to do. With a quarterback that's a little bit more erratic, turns the ball over a little bit more, that makes me a little bit nervous. So, look, definitely not the easiest schedule. Obviously, they go at Alabama and sort of their offseason. I don't think Miami, Ohio is a pushover team either. You play at Michigan, you get Ohio State, you get at Oregon, you play
Garrett,
Indiana.
just read it. Hold on. Read it in order after the Maryland game, after their first bye. Just read it in order and let that speak for itself.
It's pretty brutal. At Michigan, Iowa at home, Ohio State at home, at Oregon, Washington, at Indiana, Illinois, and at Minnesota. Minnesota might be their best chance at a win in that stretch.
They're not a pushover either.
They're not a pushover team either. So between Maryland, which is September 20th, and Minnesota, which is November 29th, you may not see a whole lot of W's on schedule for Wisconsin. They're going to have to stack them up early, and I don't see it. I mean, I think you could make a legitimate case for a 3-win team here.
Well, the bottom line, guys, is they just need to get back to Wisconsin football. You mentioned the dairy raid not working. In all 7 of their losses last year, they were outrushed by an average of 86 yards per game. If they outrushed the other team, they won the game last year. 5-0 when they outrushed the other team, 0-7 when they got outrushed. So it's a combination of the defense not being good at stopping the run. They brought in a lot of defensive line transfers, 8 defensive line transfers. They have 9 total guys listed over 300 pounds now. So maybe we're getting back to Wisconsin football.
Yeah.
Right? But the other side of the ball, too, they have to be able to run the ball and control that tempo. I'm with you, Garrett. When I just kind of sketched out the schedule, if nothing improves from last year, if it's just a very similar vibe to what we saw last year, I get 4-8. And I think that's being generous with finding a win somewhere where they're probably not going to be favored. But if there is improvement, if Billy Edwards can run that system really well, and if they can run the ball better and stop the run better, I could definitely see them getting back to a bowl game because they do have that talent there. And I don't think Luke Fickell has forgotten how to coach.
No, I don't either. I think you both have hit the nail on the head at various points. It just hasn't worked yet, right? We know he's a good coach. He got Cincinnati to the college football playoff when it was just a 4-team playoff, right? So we know the guy can win. We know he can coach. It just the pieces haven't resulted in wins quite yet. And yeah, this schedule is absolutely disgusting. Wisconsin fans, listen, if you're still watching, if you're still listening, we're bearing at least my lead, and I put this in the written preview. I like your team. I really do. I like a lot of the talent on the roster. I just have questions at a couple of positions and trends that I'm concerned about that I want to see change. I want to see a bounce in that chart before I'm willing to invest in it. I don't know if we found rock bottom yet, and I want to make sure that we're going to get some resistance there to go ahead and make our climb back up. So wins and losses I do not think will determine the worth of this college football team. Of course, the age-old saying, you are what your record says you are. In this case, I don't know that it's going to apply. I think this is a very talented team that's got a lot going for it, except for the freaking schedule, which is just going to be daunting.
You guys scheduled the road trip to Alabama. I can't really help you there, but
yeah,
you guys should really consider marching on the Big Ten office in Indianapolis because hunger strike something, because I think that stretch that Garrett read is illegal in several countries and frowned upon by the Geneva
It's a hate crime for sure. It shouldn't be allowed in college football.
All right, well, let's wrap this episode with the final team in this leg, and that is the 13th ranked team in the Big Ten, according to you guys, the Jimmies and the Joes. That's the Maryland Terrapins. Mike Loxley's crew in College Park. Are we going to Bentley's SVP? I don't know. We'll see. Listen, the Terrapins continue to be a little bit of a personal disappointment to me. I talk myself into them every year. I think the last 2 years I've been very bullish on them, very outspoken. Loxley is recruited like a champion. He has talked the talk like a champion. And then they went 4-8 last year, and they went 1-8 in conference play, and they just could not find a way to win football games. The turnovers continue to be an issue. The offense was sluggish at best. They scored 10 against Northwestern, 13 against Iowa, 17 against Rutgers. We just could not find points. Defense wasn't any better. They finished 105th in scoring prevention. And while Maryland had a number of draft picks, to me, it's all just kind of been for show. Like, yes, it's a compilation of talented players. We've seen some of that in College Station over the last couple of years, but it does not result in accumulated victories over the course of the season. So we start with the offense here for the Terps. What's the path forward? Loxley continues to recruit athletes, and he's definitely stocked the roster in that department. Nolan Ray will take over at running back. 374 yards last year, showed some fantastic bursts of talent and speed. Roman Hemby's off to Indiana. We'll talk about the Hoosiers in just a little bit. So Ray's going to get his chances. I like the wide receiver core. They bring in Jaleel Farouk from Oklahoma, Kalen Webb from Tennessee. They've got Dorian Fleming coming in from Georgia State, a versatile tight end. So I think they're going to have weapons. The question that I have, without a doubt, the biggest question of this Maryland team, can a true freshman take over from day one? Loxley closed on a blue-chip, highly coveted quarterback in Malik Washington, beating out teams like Syracuse and Penn State. Syracuse just landed a 5-star wide receiver, so Fran Brown can recruit. It was a heck of a job by Mike Loxley. But now it's a question of whether or not he's ready to ascend to the throne to start the season opener. He's got to beat out Justin Martin, a UCLA transfer, and then returning backup Christian Martin. But quarterback is not necessarily a deep position at Maryland. And so you can start to see the chance where, hey, a 6'4" true freshman quarterback with a rocket arm, maybe Loxley's starting to feel the heat up in College Park. maybe we just roll the dice and see if we can catch lightning in a bottle. The defense has got to find a strength this season. Last year, they were just kind of slightly above average against the run. They were not very good consistently at really anything else. They brought in Ted Monachino to be co-defensive coordinators to try and give that unit a little bit of a boost. And then they really took a hit. They've got a talented secondary, but they took a hit in the spring when they lost linebacker Caleb Wheaton and Kellen Wyatt to the portal. Wheaton went to Auburn, Wyatt went to Indiana. So the defense, very much a work in progress, I think, as we head into 2025. The schedule, guys, is actually kind of good news. I mean, if there's ever a year that Loxley's going to put it together, it might be this season. No Penn State, no Oregon, no Iowa. They start the year against a pair of intriguing G5 teams. They get Florida Atlantic, who I think is going to be all gas, no brakes, with Zach Kitley. And then NIU, that's having to replace their quarterback and a lot of their key pieces, but a very talented team, obviously, out of the MAC. So all of that's before opening Big Ten play against Wisconsin. You talk about a game where two teams are in desperate need of some good vibes early in the season, something to hang their hat on. Maryland, Wisconsin might be that game, and I believe they go to Camp Randall. So Wisconsin gets that win at home. The Terps do play Washington, Nebraska, Indiana, and Michigan, all at home, all within the friendly confines of College Park. So when you're looking at a team that's ranked this low by the Jimmies and the Joes, to me, this is the first team that I look at their schedule and go, okay, this is one that could severely overperform their ranking if everything starts to hit on all cylinders.
They're going to have to ramp up. Like, it's going to have to be catch fire in a bottle early. You talked about a Florida Atlantic, Northern Illinois, Towson. Like, they're going to have to stack some wins, and not just win, but like look good doing it and find their rhythm. Otherwise, the quarterback position has me pretty nervous, right? We talked about UCLA not being a very good passing team. Justin Martin's not necessarily a guy that I'm like, hey, he's going to come in and fix the whole thing. I also look at this as saying, if you're putting your trust in a freshman, he's got to be really dang good. It's worked for coaches before. It worked with DJ Lagway last year. It kind of saved Florida.
It's worked for Mike Loxley before when he was
has.
At Alabama. He had Jalen Hurts and Tua as starting freshman quarterbacks.
It's not a complete death sentence here, but like obviously the supporting cast is going to have to step up for him and be reliable for him to be able to succeed there. If he's the starter from day one. If it was just up to me, and I know that I'm probably coaching for my job, I'm almost assuredly going to be saying start the kid and just let him get used to it, because he's got to be the guy to run, right? He's got to be the guy that you let find his feet and give you the best chance to maybe pull an upset and find you any sort of job security. I don't hate Loxley by any means. I think he's a good coach, but man, he's got to turn something around. Like, we had talked a couple off seasons ago about how, like, man, Maryland, they just can't get over the fact that their division, they got to get over the top of Penn State and Ohio State and Michigan. I'm like, yeah, you play one of those teams this year. You got out of the divisions format. You have a runway here. You got to start winning some games. You got to start turning it around. 4-8 ain't going to cut it. They're going to have to find a way to win some more games this year. And you said it, Mitch, like, it's a better schedule. They can win some games this year, but this is the time when it's time to, get off the pot, so to speak. He's got to start winning some games.
I think
they're going to start Malik Washington. I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to waste time with anybody else. I think Garrett hit the nail on the head there. Feels really similar to the Florida situation last year. Coach feeling some heat, needs to just show that he has a future, and Malik Washington is that future. I think this could be a really fun half team. I think that might be the ceiling for Maryland this year. I don't see them contending for a conference title by any stretch of the imagination, but they could be a really fun half team that puts the fear of God into you on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know how they're going to stop people. Mm-hmm. You mentioned they got some interesting pieces, but they're replacing so much production. And I just don't really know I just don't really know what the identity is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. It certainly hasn't been aggressiveness. It hasn't been pass rush, right? They only had 14 sacks all year last year, and just 2 of those come back. So I just don't know what the identity is on the defensive side of the ball to really start picking them. You mentioned the schedule is really easy, but I don't know that I wouldn't pick them against Washington at home, Nebraska at home, Indiana at home right now until we see what they have on the field. So it could be a really fun half team. Don't know how they stop people, but I am really intrigued by the offense to see if they can just outscore a few teams that aren't quite ready.
Well, and that's going to have to be the recipe for success, right? I don't see the improvement on the defensive side from what they brought in this offseason that will plug those holes and suddenly make Maryland a complete team. The line is 4.5 wins for a reason, right? I mean, it's Vegas telling you that they don't believe that they've got enough on the Jimmies and the Joes side of things to take advantage of what I think you objectively have to say is a favorable Big Ten schedule. If they can get on a roll, and if Mike Locksley can start to pay off some of those recruiting wins. Right now, to me, he looks like a great general manager, a heck of a talent evaluator. But boy, when it comes to putting it all together, I'd love to know what Maryland fans actually think of Mike Locksley. And I had reached out to a couple, hoping to get a take before this podcast, and just haven't heard back quite yet from any of those resources. But I'd love to know what the temperature of the Terp fan base is on Mike Locksley. Do you believe in him going forward? You know he can recruit. He's got, I believe, the top edge rusher in the 2026 class is committed to Maryland right now, and has said he's shut down his recruitment. He said he's going to be a Terp. So you know he can bring talent into College Park. What kind of evaluation and evolution happens then once those guys get to campus is another question entirely. So I think Maryland's going to be a fun team. I think they're going to be very entertaining. But as far as results go, certainly have to wait and see. So those are our bowl hopeful teams as ranked by you guys, the Jimmies and the Joes. Next time we will talk about the dark horses and our storylines for the conference. What do we think will be the number one question that we have that we want to see through the end of the year? What do we think the themes are for the Big Ten as we talk about teams that we believe could compete for a conference title, could be one of those teams that spoils your season towards the top of the conference. For Trey Reeves and Garrett Turney, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until Wednesday, so long, everybody.